I'm going to tell on myself a lot. I started already. The message I'm going to share with you is for me. I'm speaking it to me. In the recent days, the Lord has pointed out to me two times, separate times, some things in my life. The first time was just a couple weeks ago. Said that I'm thinking too small. You remember that? I'm thinking too small. Now he's pointed out more. Thursday, we have the flood in the basement, and Thursday morning before, I don't know, it was 7 o'clock or so, walking around just looking for clues as to why we might have the flood in the basement. So I walked all around the block, down the alley, down the next street, all around to see what could be causing the flood in the basement. Because something's got to, it was under control, so something had to change. And as I was walking around the block, I started humming and then singing the song, Holy Spirit, thou art welcome in this place. You know that song? Started singing that as I'm walking. It was just flowing from me. And I got down to about the Living Word Church, and actually I think I was crossing their gravel parking lot area, and then I just started moving prophetically, singing to that tone, but prophetically speaking to me. Prophetically speaking to me about God's mercy and God's grace and what God's working in my life. And then the words came out, the next line, after exalting God for his mercy and grace. The next line was something to the effect of, you've extended me mercy and grace, but I'm not standing in it. I'm not standing in it. And I just let it go. Normally I would, that's a negative confession, I would normally stop that negative confession, but this was prophetic and it was just flowing. But I'm not standing in it. And as I was saying those words, I knew exactly what areas that was pinpointing and targeting. Then the next line is, I will experience all of your mercy and grace. So I don't want you to think that I'm left there, not standing in it. But God spoke to me about not standing in his grace, and I had a great morning with him. He showed me, earlier I said that the first encounter on this topic was that he showed me that I was thinking small. Now he's talking to me about being slow to respond. And I'm sure Gladys and Buzzy probably think, oh no, if he's going to be responding, we got to be responding. But I've been slow to respond. God showed me a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, something that I should be doing to move in the direction that he wants me to go, and I haven't acted on it. He showed me 2 or 3 things that I need to enact in order to move in the direction that he wants me to go. First thing I want to say is, when God leads you, tells you, here, I'm laying this out. This is what my plan for you is. He's not going to tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, he's not going to do that, because then you're either, if he does that, then you're either going to step out and do it in your own strength, or you're going to cower, shrink back, and be afraid, saying that's too big for me. So he's going to tell you 1 or 2 steps that you need to act on right now, and as you act on those, then he'll give you the next step or 2. Okay? Too many times we want the game plan. Tell me the game plan. Give me the strategy for the entire thing. Not just what I face right now, here, right now, today. And we won't act until we have the entire game plan. So therefore, we sit on the sideline because we don't think we have the entire game plan, because we don't think we've heard from God, because it's not the entire game plan. But you know what? If it's the entire game plan, here's a good way for you to learn. If you get the entire game plan, I'm not saying that it's not from God, but I am saying that you have probably influenced that game plan. Because the entire game plan, when you get the entire game plan like that, it's usually in line with your abilities and your resources. But when God gives you a vision for something, it will always be bigger than your abilities and your resources, and that's why, again, he gives it to us, one piece of it. So I got to ask myself the question, why am I being slow at acting on what God's shared with me, or what God's directing me in? Why am I being slow? Here's the very easy solution, or reason. Because of what I see. What I see. See, you are only going to move in the direction that you see. Anybody in here ever build a house, whether it be a house for yourself or build a house for somebody else? Ever? No? Rocco did? Okay. You may not have built a house. You may not have helped build a house or built a house for yourself. But I'm sure you know that when the lumber is dropped off at the job site, that lumber is, the guys don't just show up and start picking up that lumber and putting it together however they feel it should fit. They go off of a plan that they can see. There's a blueprint that they can see. There's a picture showing them what to do. And believe it or not, you live according to the picture you see today. You're where you're at today because of the picture you see. You're where you're at vocationally because of the picture you see regarding vocation. You're where you're at, I'm going to even say physically and mentally and spiritually, all aspects of our life. We are where we're at because of the picture that we see. You're where you're at financially because of the picture you see. You may not like that picture. Maybe you do. Maybe there's aspects of your life where you do like that picture, and other aspects where you don't like that picture. The good news is that if you are at a point in your life where you don't like the picture that you're seeing, you can make a change. You can rewrite that picture. You can change the picture that you see. See, in order to be in order to walk in healing, you got to see yourself healed. If you see yourself sick, you're not going to walk in healing. If you see yourself struggling with sin, you're not going to see yourself, you're not going to experience victory. Why does a drug addict go back to the drug? Besides the physical effects or the physical yearnings or things that the chemical of that drug has instilled in them, the reason that they're not breaking the power of that chemical is because they see themselves bound to it. They see themselves needing it. Alcohol's the same way. Everything in life is the same way. I'm just using something, an illustration that you can see. If I was to ask you how many doors and how many windows are in your bedroom, most likely you have never really counted them. Maybe you counted them years ago when you bought curtains or whatever, but you haven't counted them recently, so there's no note in your pocket that you're going to pull out and say, I got one window, I got 2 doors. But you can tell me how many windows and how many doors are in your bedroom, can't you? I remember the first house that I lived in when I was a little kid. We lived on a street called West Street in Passaic Highlands, which is the Johnsburg area. It was a white ranch house. I moved out of that house in 4th to 5th grade. It was that summer time. Moved out of that house at that time. I could take you from the front door and take you to each bedroom, each room in the house. You walked in the front door, and the living room was to the left, the kitchen was to the right. It was used to have a 2-car garage that my dad converted into a rec room or a den, whatever you want to call it. So off of the kitchen, there was the den, whatever you're going to call that. And if I went into the kitchen and turned to my left, I would see the laundry room. Go again forward, I would see my room. Turn to the left again, I would see the bathroom on the left. I'd see my sister's room on the right. Go straight ahead, I would see my mom and dad's room. Turn again, and now I'm back at the living room by the entry. I haven't lived there. Let's say I moved out of there when I was 10 years old. I don't know how old I was at that grade. I'm 56. I have not lived there in 46 years. I could tell you that. I could tell you how many windows are in that house. I can see it with my mind. Yeah. See, your mind, you go in the direction of your mind. What you can see is the direction that you go. Your mind is very powerful, and you need to utilize your mind properly in the kingdom. So I started to say that the reason that I am not moving at the speed that the Lord wants me to move, or thinking at the size that the Lord wants me to think, is because my mind sees a smaller picture. God's got a calling and a purpose for every person in this room. And no calling, no purpose is higher than any calling or purpose. No calling in this room or purpose in this room is higher than any other calling or purpose. How many of us in this room are going to fulfill our calling and our purpose? I'm going to fulfill my calling and my purpose. But in order for me to fulfill my calling In order for me to fulfill my purpose, I got to paint that picture on the inside of me of what that calling and that purpose is. I got to take the time to meditate on and think about what it is that God's placed in me. I got to take the time to do that. I got to use my imagination in order to do that. You know what meditating is? Meditating is using your imagination. You can meditate on circumstances. You're using your imagination to do that. Or you can meditate on the promise, and you're using your imagination to do that. Both of those will paint a picture. One's going to paint a picture of the circumstance being strong, a fortress, something unconquerable. Or the promise will paint a picture of the promise, God's power and glory flourishing in your life and shining through your life, overcoming that challenge and that obstacle. A man only walks in the direction he sees. What happens when you're driving? Think of this. Have you ever been driving? Maybe it's a 2-lane road. 4-lane road, actually. 2 lanes going this way, 2 lanes going that way. And you're in the left lane, and you want to change over to the right lane. So you're holding the wheel, and you turn your head to see if there's a car there, so you're not cutting a car off. But as you turn your head, what actually ends up happening, if you're not concentrating, what will happen as you turn your head to see if a car's coming? You're going to turn the wheel. Why? Because you go in the direction that you look. For some reason, I'm really getting off on these YouTube videos where they're fixing hoofs on cows and horses. It's like the Dr. Pimple Popper videos, but for horses and cows. And one thing I watched this real little Chinese guy fix the hooves of a mule without any issue, without any problem. You know what he did? He took the bridle around the mule's neck or face, and he tied it so that the mule was looking down. Guess what? That mule could do nothing else but look down. If he didn't do that, that mule would look this way, and that whole body would be going whatever direction that mule would look. Just by controlling what that mule saw, the direction that mule was looking, he can control that whole mule's body. You have that same ability within you. You can control your whole life just by controlling what you see. Romans 5:17 says that those who receive the abundance of grace and the gift of righteousness shall reign in life through the one Jesus Christ. See, God's plan is that you reign in life. God's plan for you is not to have somebody else controlling what you're seeing, like that man did with the mule. But God's plan is that you have control over what you're seeing so that you can have control over what your life is like. Open your Bibles to Proverbs 23, verse 7. Actually, skip that one. You go to Isaiah 26:3. I'll read you 23:7. Proverbs 23:7 says, "For as he thinks in his heart, so is he." See, as that picture that's painted in his heart, so is he. As the picture that's painted in your heart, so are you. But man, we let anything paint a picture on our life. We pay $200 a month to allow Comcast or whatever service you have, paint a picture on your heart. We got to watch what we're painting on our hearts. You know, I remember hearing this story about an evangelist that went to a church to minister, and the pastor's wife had eyesight problems and wore Coke bottle glasses. Okay? You know what I mean by that. Not physical Coke bottles, just really thick lenses. Okay? And she avoided the evangelist because she didn't want to be prayed for another time and be let down. You know, being the pastor's wife, anytime a guest speaker would come, you know, they'd get her and pray for her, and she wouldn't be any better. Well, she avoided this guest speaker, this evangelist that was at their church, to the last service. At the end of the last service, he said, "I want to pray for you." She reluctantly said, "Okay," and she stood there while he prayed, and then he said, "Okay, now, can you see?" So she starts to open her eyes, and he says, "Shut your eyes." She's thinking, well, what's he telling me? He's asking me if I can see. So she shuts her eyes again, and then he says, "Okay, can you see?" She opens her eyes again. He says, "Shut your eyes." Third time, he says, "Okay, can you see?" And she starts to open, and he sees that she's starting to open her eyes, and he says, "I did not tell you to open your eyes. I asked you, can you see? If you're going to be healed, you have to see yourself healed before you will receive your healing. So can you see yourself seeing?" She stood there for a few minutes, just thinking on that, what he just said, what he just did and said. And she said, "Okay, I can see now." He said, "Okay, open your eyes." And when she did, she could see, physically see, clearly without the glasses. You have to be able to see the promise of God coming to pass in your life. You have to be able to see you fulfilling God's purpose in your life. You're not going to accomplish your calling or purpose or destiny, whatever word you want to put on it. You're not going to accomplish that just by osmosis. It's not just going to happen. You have to pursue that. You have to pursue it. Too often we take the path like I took. When I graduated from high school, I got a job being a carpenter. I enjoyed woodworking. So guess what type of work I did? I did carpentry work and woodworking type work. Was I called to it? No. Now, fast forward to my 40s, and I'm in my 40s, and now I'm depressed, I'm sad, I'm frustrated because all I know is carpentry, and I'm in my 40s, and for me to go back to school now to learn something different, and then to take a wage at an entry-level position, I couldn't see it working. You know, I took that path of least resistance. That wasn't God's calling in my life. It's what I fell into. Now, God used it. He used it all along the way, but it wasn't God's purpose for me. It wasn't God's purpose for me. When I started experiencing God's purpose for me, I started living. Really seriously, I started living. So you're in Isaiah chapter 26. Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts you. The word for mind right there, that word is translated imagination in other places. So you could say, you will keep him in perfect peace, he whose imagination is stayed on thee. Imagination, I think, says it a little bit more than mind. Because imagination, mind just puts bump one thing. But imagination is something that's continually churning, in my opinion. When you're using your imagination, you're picturing scenarios taking place. So if my imagination is stayed on God, I'm picturing God scenarios taking place in my life. You know, the Hebrew word for imagination or mind in this verse is yetzer. Yetzer. That word means, one of the meanings of that word is conception. Conception. See, your imagination, a proper use of your imagination will conceive the promise of God. It will picture that promise coming to pass. An improper use of your imagination would be to be picturing the failure and the circumstance overtaking you. Picture yourself getting COVID. Oh, I can't go there, I'll get COVID. I can't do this or can't do that. Because of whatever. Doesn't have to just be COVID. I know plenty of people that don't drive at night because they're afraid to be out at night. Why? Why would somebody be afraid to drive at night? Now, I get it, that at night it's a little harder to see. And if your eyesight isn't clear, I get that. But the only reason that somebody would be afraid to drive at night is because they're picturing the troubles that can come from driving at night. Whatever you do, you got to do it in confidence, not in fear. If you're afraid of heights, what should you do? Go to the John Hancock Center, or if that's what it's still called, whatever it's called today. Go there, get up on the lookout platform and look out. Go to the Willis Tower, and they have that clear plexiglass platform that you can step out into. Go out there, stand there, jump on it, do something. Get yourself, bring that fear under your control. You know that if you jump on it, you're not going to tip the building over. But your fear will tell you that. Your fear will tell you that if you jump on it, you're going to break through. But there could have just been 10 people standing out there, and that didn't cause a crack at all. But your one little jump is gonna. See, you're going in the direction that you see. That's why you stay away from that, because you're going in the direction that you see. So the word here means conception. One of the meanings is conception. Another meaning of the word for mind or imagination is to form, such as in pottery. Shape, form. Frame. Think of a house. The framing crew puts a structure to the blueprint, right? Isn't this definition accurate? You frame, conceive, form, and frame things in your mind. These things can be true or false, real or fake, but your mind paints a picture of the way you are perceiving it. That's what your mind does. The way you perceive it, your mind will paint a picture in that going that direction. Here's a verse well, here, go to Genesis 6:5. Wow. Time's flying. Go to Genesis 6:5, and it says, this is right before the flood, okay? And God saw that the wickedness of man's heart was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That word imagination there is the same word yetzer. Okay? See, and what were they doing? They were imagining evil things. They were imagining fearful things. They were imagining evil actions. They were not using their imagination properly. Go to 1 Kings. We talked about this on Wednesday. 1 Kings 19, verses 2 and 3. Elijah just kills all the prophets of Baal. Jezebel now sends out a guy or guys to tell him, hey, I'm going to kill you. What you did to those prophets, I'm going to do to you. And if she really meant that, those guys that delivered that message would have came with a sword and not just with a message, right? She has that authority. She had that authority, so she could have done that if she really wanted that. I just want to focus on Elijah's response. I'm at verse 2. It says, and then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. Notice this. Next verse. And when he saw, where did he see it? In his mind. Do you see words floating out of my mouth right now? Okay. When he saw, see, the words that they were saying were painting a picture in his mind, and that picture caused fear to rise up in him. What words are you seeing? What words are painting pictures in your life? Now, you live in a fallen world. You're going to have negative words spoken to you. But you got to know how to deal with those words. You've got to put those words under your feet, not respond to those words or react to those words. That's a better word. Don't react to those words, but do respond to those words. What's the difference between reacting and responding? Maybe, yes, right. Exactly. Responding is an action. And reacting is freaking out, right? Maybe you told your kid to wash the dishes by the time you got home, and you got home and saw the dishes were not washed, and you reacted. Yeah. You reacted. You flew off the handle. What'd you do all night? I've been gone all night. What'd you do? See, don't react to the negative words that are spoken out there, but respond to them. How do you respond to them? Just like it says in Isaiah, no weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue of judgment that rises against you, you shall condemn. It doesn't say God's going to condemn it for you. It says you shall condemn. You gotta take those thoughts captive. When circumstances are coming against you, you can't just think whatever you want to think. You can if you want to stay in the negative circumstance, but if you want deliverance, you've got to take your thoughts captive and only think in agreement with God's word. Change that picture. Change the picture that says you're sick to a picture that says you're healed. And then change it from a picture that says you're healed to a picture that says I walk in God's divine health. You can use that analogy for every aspect of life. God will always deliver you, but his best for you is that you walk in, that your life thrives. That you don't need the deliverance. How many of you love to spank your kids? Didn't you want them to live in such a way that they didn't require discipline? And I'm not saying that the problems come into your life because God's disciplining you. No, that's not the case. Every good and every perfect gift comes from the Father above, with whom there is no variation nor shadow of turning. When God disciplines you, when he corrects you with his word. You know, the last few days have just been so nice. I've been getting revelation. I've been yielding and responding to what the Lord is saying. And I know that you've heard me say this before, that I used to love or like, maybe not love, but like falling when I was skateboarding. Because I would learn from that fall. I would learn I can't have my feet in that position. I can't have my weight, my center of gravity in that area, and that leaning that direction if I'm going to pull that off. I'd learn. And the last few weeks have just been correction after correction after correction between me and the Lord. And I'm enjoying it. You know, when it first gets pointed out, there's sorrow. When it first gets pointed out, there's sorrow. Because with God, he's not comparing you to somebody else. He's not saying, well, you didn't quite do as good as Gary did. He's comparing you to his word. And either you made it or you didn't make it. Either it's right or it's wrong. So when he first points out your error, you know there's no wiggle room. Yeah, but I did, no. You see yourself as wholly and entirely in the wrong. But he's not putting you under his thumb, grinding you down, and rubbing your nose in it. He's lifting you up and showing you how to avoid that in the future, how to stay free from that in the future. So I'm learning a whole lot right now. I'm learning a lot. And I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. I was just thinking that on the way over because he corrected me today on the way over. And at first, when I first got that correction, I come to a realization that I'm 100% in the wrong on this area, on whatever this is. I'm wrong. But as soon as I come to that realization, his love is right there, boosting me, lifting me up, saying it'll be okay. Not as in it'll be okay as I'm going to ignore it. No, it'll be okay because it's paid for. It'll be okay because I'm going to strengthen you. I'm going to uphold you by my righteous right hand. Nothing's more thrilling than getting revelation from God. Nothing is more thrilling than getting revelation. It is like the cocaine of the gospel. I'm serious. It is. We had a text about this earlier in the week. It is addictive to get revelation from God. When you get revelation from God, you desire more. You desire more. Revelation is what changes that picture inside your head, inside your heart. When you change that picture, you're going to change the fruit of your life. Stand with me.